we don't need to be Christ or Buddha. We don't need to vibe high. We can give ourselves permission to have the human experience, to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be human, to have times that are difficult and uncomfortable or down or low, because they provide contrasts that help us to appreciate what's good.
What is the one tone that you feel humanity most needs to embody right now?
The tone of the cosmos, like the music of the spheres, the one song, right? Universe, the one song. We're all part of the one, and we want to be moved by and in the truth of that one, right? You don't want cells in your body going rogue and acting as if they're not part of the body. I think that's maybe what cancer is like some group of cells has lost the plot here and they're not in sync with the fundamental harmony that the body is designed for.
Eileen McKusick, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
Wow, that's a great question, Emilio. What am I most excited about? Well, I think that I'm seeing real healing happening. I'm seeing real coherence occurring in individuals and communities. And I know that on a certain level, it does seem like it's all getting worse, that we're descending into chaos. But even as we descend into chaos, there is a new order arising within it. And that's sort of what my sights are set on. I see it, right? I'm not just hoping for it or wishing for it or believing in it. Like I'm actually witnessing it in myself and others in my community that I hang out with. So there's that. And then personally, as I told you, I'm going to Belize tomorrow. I've never been there. So I'm kind of excited about that little trip. Yeah. I love traveling. I love going places I've never been. I love adventures.
Yeah, the soul expands whenever we find ourselves in a new environment. And there's a law in physics, because you brought up this beautiful word, coherence, which we've heard a lot about, but there's this law of physics that you teach that is a strong coherent signal will overtake and entrain a weak incoherent signal. So I wanted to talk about this bigger picture of what's going on in the world right now when you're having people enter and entrain into deeper states of their own coherence. How does that affect the whole? How does that affect the planet, the species, humanity, all the environments that we go to? How does that affect, when we're in coherence, everything that's around us?
Mm-hmm. Well, when we generate a coherent field, it absolutely informs around us. If you've ever been in a difficult situation, but there's one person who's keeping their head and holding it down, it informs everyone. And the first thing that actually came to mind is the work of Veda Austin. I don't know if you're familiar with Veda's work or if you've had her on the show. But she did this experiment with free-range eggs versus caged eggs, and did her freezing method on the album. And in the caged eggs, it was kind of chaotic, but in the free-range egg, it was beautiful. It was orderly. It was expressed a lot of coherence. And so she put a free-range, healthy, good egg in the middle of 12 incoherent eggs. And the coherence of the good egg actually informed all of the other eggs. And it was very evident through her freezing method. So I think that's just such a great example of how, as each of us makes it our goal to become more clear, more in alignment, more sovereign, more truly free, more healthy, more balanced, all of those things, that we are absolutely informing and influencing the world around us. And that the best thing that we can do to fix out there is to bring ourselves into the greatest order that we can imagine.
You talk about the field and how our bodies, the electric body, our human biofield, also interacts with the wider field around us. What is that relationship there?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're all one field, really. And our language and our education has taught us to see everything as separate, but everything arises from the same field, dissolves back into the same field. Rupert Sheldrake talks about morphic fields or morphogenetic fields. And these fields, the collective field is a sum total of all of us and what we are adding to it. And the more people who become, I think maybe this whole idea of even bringing heaven to earth. I'm part of an organization, a gathering called Confluence, and something that my friend Alex Zek, who you might know, organizes. And we had over 700 people at this last event at Sovereignty Ranch in Texas. And it was such a highly coherent event that everyone who was there are people who are on this path and interested in health and truth and freedom and knowledge. And so to have 700 people all together in a highly coherent space and a highly coherent event, like that's informative, and it strengthens and informs everyone. And then people leave a gathering like that and go back into their communities, and they bring that energy back into their communities. And I remember being there and feeling like we were just right at like the bleeding edge of this arising of what I call spontaneous, coherent emergence. And that idea comes from cymatics. So if you're familiar with the science of cymatics, it's the study of waveforms. And you go on YouTube and look at videos. And the first time I ever saw a cymatics video back in 2006 or 2007, it totally blew my mind, because cymatics really illustrates how the sound current underlies and gives rise to and shape and form to matter. And when you are generating a particular frequency, so there's different ways to do it. I actually have a cymoscope where I have a little dish of water and I can run different frequencies and things through that, which is so fascinating to play with. But the old school way is to take a flat black metal plate called a Chladni plate, put a speaker underneath it, and run a particular tone or frequency. And every single frequency generates a very specific pattern. And when the frequency changes, the pattern descends into chaos. And it takes a moment for the new frequency to inform the sand or the salt or whatever is on the plate. But then there's this sudden arising, this spontaneous arising of a new coherent pattern. And so that's how it felt to me being at Confluence. I'm like, we're right on the leading edge of this new coherence that will spontaneously arise within the human mind, within the human spirit. Like, I feel it coming. And I think it's very easy to look at all of the chaos and feel sort of doomy about it. So it's really important to remember that as something is dissolving, something new is arising. And can you align yourself with the pattern that's arising instead of getting entrapped into the chaos of the change that's taking place?
I was at a Dr. Joe Dispenza event or retreat, and there's one thing he said, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it really blew my mind. And he was describing how we are not these bodies emitting an energetic field. We are information condensing itself into matter. And that got me thinking, if I'm not a body, if I'm not really a body, what am I actually? And I'd love to turn that question over to you and in your field of research and study, what you found we really are. Mm-hmm. If we're not just these bodies, if we're not actually emitting a field, but we are the field condensing itself into matter, what are we?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're light. Everything is light. We are fields of information, of vibrating light. We all have frequency signatures. Let me just grab a prop real quick, and I'll show you what I just.
We love the props. We love the props.
Okay. So this is my prop. This is a Torus. And this is what I discovered with my work with tuning forks. So back in 1996, almost 30 years ago, I started bouncing sound off people with tuning forks, like sonar or LiDAR. I was actually watching a program the other day about LiDAR, and it was showing like all of the structures that have been revealed, right, in the Amazon basin. So fascinating. I was like, wow, if I wasn't a biofield tuner, I would be a LiDAR operator, because this is so cool to see, have sound reveal what is hidden, right? So cool.
Yeah.
And so
That's how they discovered the pillars beneath this pyramid, the pyramids in
with
Giza
LiDAR.
recently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that is really how I've been using audible sound. So tuning fork is simply an acoustic tone generator, and it has the same properties as a sonar or any of these things where you bounce the sound off and you pay attention to the ping back and what is the information that's revealed in that ping back. And when I first started doing this, I had no idea what I was doing. But it was so, from day one, just so intriguing to me, so puzzling and so surprising. And, but in Connecticut, where I was in the 90s, when I told people I was doing sound healing with tuning forks, you can imagine the kind of response I got from people. Like, it just sounded so impossibly and undigestably pseudoscientific and airy-fairy and new age. And so I never really wanted to do it as a vocation because I didn't want people to see me that way. But as a hobby, it was super fascinating. And so I did maybe 1 or 2 sessions a week for 10 years. And then one day in 2006, I discovered that there was stuff going on around the body, because I'd only been working right over the body, because why would I do anything other than that? And just by this very sort of accidental, serendipitous thing, I discovered that there was, when you bounce sound off the body, it comes back with changes in texture, tone, volume, timbre, depending on what is going on in the body. So let's say you have a lot of pain in one shoulder, but not in the other. Well, if I hold a tuning fork over where there's pain, it's likely going to sound really sharp. And if I hold it over your other shoulder that doesn't hurt, it's going to sound normal. So, and this is very evident. Like, when people start learning this work, they're like, whoa, this is more obvious than I thought it would be, right? It's not so subtle that you have to imagine that it might be happening or not. It's very real. It's very tangible. It's very obvious. And it's very scientific in the way that every single emotion produces a particular frequency signature. It's the same from person to person. Every pathology produces a particular noise, right? Just like if the left CV boot in your car and my car both go, it's going to make the same sound, right? And a good mechanic is going to know what's wrong with your car based on the fact that it's making noise in a particular way. So our human bodies are the same way. If everything is flowing and functioning the way it's supposed to, they're like making music. The tuning forks sound good. But if something is not functioning properly, it makes noise. And that noise can be heard in the overtones and undertones of the tuning forks. So the tuning forks give us the ability to hear the body, but to also, what I discovered, hear the atmosphere around the body and what's going on in that. And so as I started to explore this atmosphere, I discovered that what I was finding in places that went atonal or the fork felt stuck were actually memories. And I came to see that what we call the biofield, the body's electrical system, the electric current that runs through us and the magnetic field that surrounds us, is what we would call mind, or our sense of self, or I. It's where all our memories are stored. It's where all our feelings happen. Our feelings are very magnetic. Our thoughts are very electric. That it's really our sense of self is in our electrical system. So as I explored this area, I discovered that there was a membrane at the outer boundary. And I wasn't expecting that. And it took a while for it to sink in that it was a membrane. And then I came to see that it was a torus. So in this model, the torus is the mind, or the sense of I, and then the body is in this central channel, right? So in this particular model, the electric health model, the body is actually inside the mind. But if I can access memories like 3 feet off your right shoulder, or even, your birth is 6 feet off, your field is about 6 feet in every direction, top and bottom, it's like 2 feet. And the outer boundary of that field holds the record of gestation. Just inside that is birth. And then how old are you, Emilio?
27.
You're 27. Okay. So half of that is 13 and a half. So I'm going to find memories that you generated when you were 13 and a half, about 3 feet off your body. Right? And this is the same from person to person. Just like hair, right? The newest is closest to us and the oldest is the furthest away. The memories that are recent are close to your body and here, right? But this boundary, this double layer plasma membrane, is sort of ephemeral, right? So if I can find you or me, what we would say is self, because it's our memories out here, where do I technically end? And especially because I can do this work at a distance. Like I can tune into your field from right here. Right. So we don't really end. We are woven into the entire field. We have a focal point of density, your plasma body, what appears to be solid in our skin. But if our mind can be accessed from out here, then we have to be woven into and integrated into the whole. Nature has no kernel or shell. She's everything, everywhere, all at once, right? And so because we're part of nature, we are all of it. It's just that our sense of I is this little light bubble. And yet at the same time, we are part of the one that is everything.
Before today's transmission, I wanted to take a minute to let you in on something that could change your life. If you've been doing the inner work and still feel like you're walking this path alone, you're not the only one. Most spiritual spaces give you endless content to consume, but not a tribe to grow with. That's why we created The Deep Dive, a living spiritual ecosystem designed to help you grow in community, rhythm, and real embodiment. Right now, our members are embarking on a journey exploring a core spiritual and practical teaching through daily activations, live community gatherings guided by me and our facilitators, and also participating in sacred challenges that are designed to help you live your practice and bring it to life. You'll be surrounded by seekers and leaders who've decided that they're done doing this work in isolation. If you're ready to find your people, visit the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen right now, and I'll see you inside. What's really interesting there, and just to summarize what you said there, and my understanding of it is, our biofields hold memories and emotions from the electrical charges of our thoughts, the magnetic impulses of our emotions. What about going a little bit deeper there? What about other lifetimes? What have you found in that aspect?
That's a really great question. So there have been occasions where I've been working on people and I've been working inside their bubble, and all of a sudden my fork takes on a mind of its own. And I find myself being pushed like outside that outer boundary. And the first time this ever happened was years ago. And I was pushed back till I was maybe 12 feet away from her, hit this area in her field. And it was so dissonant. It was just so discordant. I said, wow, this actually sounds like you're being tortured. And she said, oh, that was my lifetime when I was tortured in the Tower of London. And I was like, you know about this? And
she's like, oh yeah. It was that one.
It was that one. I was like, how is this even possible? But she had encountered that through some other way, through some past life regression. So the concept of that already existed in her conscious mind. And on those few occasions where I did find myself going outside that outer boundary into that, and I would describe what I was feeling, the person always, like without exception, already had encountered that, and it already existed in their mind. Now, I'm very much a scientist, Emilio, and I like to be able to cross-check and verify everything, right? If I get into your birth story and it feels and sounds really chaotic and your mom is still alive, I can say, Emilio, do you know what your birth story is? Because it feels really chaotic to me. And you can be like, no, but I can go ask my mom, right? And then we can sort of cross-check and verify that. When we get into past lives, it's very speculative. And for a really long time, I was like, well, could this be ancestors' lives that are in our bloodline, that are in our bones, and that we just have that memory within our blood? Or do we really have, is our light body, because I've really come to see the biofield, your electrical illuminated aspect of self, as the same thing we call our soul. When you die, your light goes out, right? Light is eternal. It can't be created or destroyed. So this idea of having an eternal soul that gets to try on different human suits at different places in the time-space continuum, there seems to be a lot of evidence for that, but I'm so skeptical about everything. So I was like, I don't really know. So I would say that it appears that way, but I've never gone and found a past life and described it to someone and person be like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Like, that's never happened. So I guess I would say, there's many things in this world, in this great mystery, that I have to land in the I don't know zone, because I just don't yet.
Yeah. And what's beautiful is the way that science is evolving right now. We're beginning to understand so much more. And I wanted to ask you there, because you mentioned this number 6 feet of the outer boundary of our biofield. I've heard stories of enlightened yogis being able to stretch their aura up to 30 feet. What determines that? Have you seen that in your work, where maybe you've come across a person that has a really expanded biofield, and what attributes that phenomenon?
Yeah, actually, the first time I found someone with a 30-foot biofield, it was my husband. Actually,
whoa,
yeah,
pick the right one. Pick the right one.
we were playing outside with dowsing rods. So I have 2 sons who are now 24 and 27. But at that time, I think they were maybe 8 and 11, and we took a dowsing class together with a esteemed geomancer by the name of Patrick McManaway. And so my kids learned how to use dowsing rods. And we actually had on that property a dragon line, or a earth energy line, that runs along the spine of the Green Mountains in Vermont. And it cut right through our yard. And so we were playing around finding, these dragon lines or ley lines or whatever, song lines, whatever you want to call them, are magnetic flows that actually also have double layer plasma membranes. And so we discovered that if you stood in the double layer plasma membrane and we doused the size of your field, it would get much bigger. It would get like 3 times as big. And so that was kind of fun to play with. If you were in the middle of the line, it would get like twice as big. So where we are geographically can inform whether our field expands or shrinks, right? I would imagine if we went to Mount Kailash in the Himalayas, right, our field would get very expansive because of the spiritual tradition that's there, of the ascended masters that live on the top of the mountain, so that the geography would inform it. But on that particular day when we were playing with dowsing rods, I was walking towards my husband. Now, in this language of dowsing rods, if you need to go backwards, they cross. And so they kept sending me backwards and backwards and backwards. And I finally was about 30 feet away before they finally swung open. My husband's like, what I observe,
brushing off.
Yeah, totally. But what I observe about him is that he's been riding motorcycles since he was 5. And riding motorcycles intensively is an extremely athletic sport. Right? If you ever watch like MotoGP, like these guys are hardcore athletes. And I think that it gave him a very strong sense of his own center and core. And the stronger the core, the stronger that central channel, the stronger that outer boundary. And the more centered you are, the more able you are to expand. And so, and he also has very much a real sense of his own self, his own boundaries, his own strengths. Right? There's no waffling or uncertainty or self-apology. He has a very strong physiology and a very strong mind and a very big spirit too. So all of that combines. He's sort of lined up all the parts and pieces that are required to have an expansive field.
Another one of those that I've heard you talk about is this. You said that the number one way to raise your voltage, and we'll talk a little bit about what voltage means, is to be authentic. Mm-hmm. Where did you find that, or how did you come across that teaching?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been a body worker for 30 years now, and I've worked with thousands and thousands of clients. And what I really found in certain personality types, like the fibromyalgia personality type, was this real holding themselves in, holding themselves back, not communicating their truth, not allowing their emotions. Well, as humans, we do have a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of energy to hold ourselves back. And when we can step into a place of being authentic, I think oftentimes people associate being authentic with being offensive, which certainly can be. But if you learn how to be diplomatically authentic in the moment, every moment, then you don't end up with any kind of backlog of things that you didn't say or you wish you had said or that you weren't letting yourself feel. When you can really just step into your own flow and honor what is arising in you and learn how to do it diplomatically and kindly, then you're not creating these patterns of restriction of holding yourselves back. I've really discovered something, Emilio, and there are so many people out there with so many different opinions about what causes disease. Oh, it's parasites. Oh, it's, this, that's that. But what I've really observed is that it's patterns of tension in our fascia, in our fluids, in our musculature, in our viscera, that is what causes disorders. And any disorder that you can think of, and I've actually never had anybody be able to come up with a disorder that isn't tension-based in some way. Digestive disorders is all about patterns of tension. Anxiety is patterns of tension. It's not allowing life force and energy and emotion to flow. Depression, there's like a heavy tension in that. Just about anything that I've been able to think of or work with has appeared to me as a pattern of tension. And so my work is really very simple. It's just about finding where these patterns of tension are in the body's electrical system, because that's primary, and helping them to release so that the body can go back into a flow state and fix itself. Because our bodies are designed to be self-repairing. Our factory settings are for harmony. That's what we're designed to do. And what gets in the way is all of the places we've pulled ourselves in, we've shrunk ourselves down, we've inhibited our expression. We're not really taught effective emotional management, most of us, right? Although I'm sure you have, from like your mom is a sound healer, right? I'm sure has some real emotional intelligence. Sound healing really does help bring about a kind of emotional flow and understanding. There's a lot of talk in our culture about mental illness, but in my observation, a lot of it's mostly emotional illness. We don't know what to do with our emotions, so we suppress them with patterns of tension, and then we try to think our feelings instead of feel and express our feelings, and everything just sort of goes haywire from there. And it's these feelings that, a lot of people do what I call stuff and blow, where they'll hold in and they'll bite their tongue and won't say anything. They'll stuff until they can't take it anymore. And then they blow. And then it's just such an ineffective form of communication. But we're not taught how to be diplomatic, how to be authentic, how to be real, how to be in flow. It's something that I think we're all learning, people who are watching this podcast. There is a generation of people that I call the karmic cleanup crew, and that we are here to heal the dysfunctions in our family lineages and sort of sort out the mess that the generations that came before us, who have been through so much trauma, underwent. And so I think that's a tall order for a lot of us, but it does seem that there are many people here who are clearly following that mission. Yeah.
I've never heard that before, the karmic cleanup crew. And obviously you just mentioned that they're cleaning up these ancestral traumas, things that were left by other generations in the past when humanity was in deeper states of disbalance, incoherence, maybe survival, fear states of being. Let's say they're cleaning up all of this stuff. what does that leave room for the generations that are coming into the planet right now? I know you just became a grandmother recently, so congratulations. And, what world do you feel like she'll be coming into when you have all these other generations focusing on cleaning up karma or incoherence in the field?
Mm-hmm. Well, just what I've seen in my own sons. My 24-year-old, especially, he became a biofield tuning practitioner when he was 18, and so he has such insight into emotions, into, like, he has a high degree of emotional intelligence that is really the fruits of all the hard work that I've done. Like, I started when I was 18 on this path, reading Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, all those guys back in the 80s. I've invested so much time and energy and money into my own healing process and sort of sorting out the mess that the culture and the family traumas created in me. And so now they don't have to do that work. They just don't have to. They understand how to communicate, how to be authentic, how to work through things. So I think for all of us who are doing this kind of work now, learning to be more functional humans, that we are absolutely making it easier for our offspring or the generations that are coming. That said, there seem to be two different tracks. There are the tracks of people who are very determinedly working in that direction. And then there's this other track that's really going more deeply into chaos. So I see both things happening right now.
Mm. And with those two paths or those two tracks, do you feel that there will ever be a convergence point, or, are we going to be living the next, maybe decades with this, let's say, camp of people that are resisting that work and others that are stepping more fully into maybe their soul alignment, or however else we want to call that feeling of coherence?
I don't know, Emilio, right? That's part of the great mystery. And I think what makes life on Earth very fascinating at the moment is that anything could happen. It certainly seems as if we're being herded into this sort of dystopian future. And yet at the same time, I know so many people who are in their hearts and minds and spirits envisioning something completely different. So, when I was a kid, I used to sometimes, if I was reading a novel, I would go and read the last chapter because I couldn't stand the suspense of not knowing what would happen. But in life, you can't do that, right? So I think for me anyway, we just have to wait and see what happens, and cultivate our own beauty path, coherence path. Bringing heaven on earth to whatever degree we can, right? We just all do our own part individually and see where it ends up. But I see so many people introducing so many methods and approaches, and so many people who truly care. Like, Emilio, you truly care about your human family, and what you do comes from a very heart-centered space. And every week you're offering this gift of coherence to your audience, right? And you're young. And so you have many years in front of you to continue to build your work and build your audience and inform the people around you. And there's lots of us doing this right now. There really are. And I have the good fortune of meeting many of my soul brothers and sisters on this mission. I know that there's many very capable people working very hard to help the human family to embody what our real true potential is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for saying that. And it's also fascinating because you're an inventor also. And historically, the inventors that have come and made massive leaps in human development are those that are able to see, in a way, glimpses of that coherent world, or that more beautiful world our heart knows is possible, like Charles Eisenstein would say. And, bringing through these new, let's say, technologies with the tuning forks, you were able to glimpse, this was something that was needed for humanity. This was something that you decided to go out and work with your manufacturers to create and offer to the world. Was there any, let's say, ancient inspiration for these tuning forks, or nature inspiration? Like we looked at the birds and we created airplanes. Was there something of that nature when it came to the tuning forks?
That's a really good question. I kind of fell into the tuning forks sort of fell in my lap in this very serendipitous way, as things often do, because I started on my path in 1987 as a researcher, as somebody who was very interested in what whole health looked like and human potential. Human potential has definitely always been a point of interest. And people who watch podcasts, they all tend to be the same way. Information, it's a trail of crumbs, and one crumb leads you to the next crumb, and you get kind of brought along your path of learning. And so my path of learning brought me to vibrational medicine. I think it was Deepak Chopra's book, Quantum Healing. And I learned about quantum physics and everything is vibration. And I remember thinking, well, if everything is just fundamentally vibration, a field of light, like we were talking about earlier, if I'm vibration, then treating vibration with vibration seems very logical and it seems very elegant. So I went out and I found all the books I could on vibrational healing. And there weren't many back in 96, 1,000 times more now. And right after I finished that stack of books, I got a Gaia catalog in the mail that had a set of tuning forks for healing in it. And that's sort of a collaboration between John Beaulieu, Jonathan Goldman, who started using tuning forks in the 80s. And I just started experimenting with them. And I got them very impulsively and just started to play and experiment. And they were just super intriguing. So I think what really kind of led me down this path was logic and then intrigue, that there were so many phenomena taking place as I was bouncing sound off people that I just didn't understand. And I think as humans, we like to be surprised. We like to be sort of intrigued by things. And I've certainly lived my life following my curiosity. Every time I've had a choice between interesting and safe, I've chosen interesting, and it's led to having a really interesting life. It's certainly very far off the beaten path. So I would say that with the tuning forks, that it was serendipitous. But where the sort of remembering came in was when I started working with Isaac and Torald Corin. And these are two Australian brothers who were musicians. They had a band. They opened for Pink and Rod Stewart and played stadiums. Then they realized that the music industry was not really their true path. And so they started this thing called the Songwriter's Journey, where they would take people who were afraid of singing and help them over that hump. And they would co-write and record songs with them. So I started working with them in 2020. And from the moment we first connected, we knew that we were kin. And through the course of what, they were leading me through their journey, this whole body of work emerged that we call Sing the Body Electric and the Sonic Anatomy. And the Sonic Anatomy is 42 different tones that resonate in different parts of the body. And they're very primitive sounds like ma, pa, ka, fi, you, me, right? The sounds that babies make naturally when they're exploring their acoustic instrument that they are. And we had a very deep sense that we were remembering this work together and that it was something that we had done in what felt like Egypt. So, and there's even glyphs in Egypt that look like tuning forks. So and when I was discovering the Biofield even and mapping the Biofield, it's really the essence of my work is this, what I call the Biofield anatomy map, but we also have the sonic anatomy map as well. When I was mapping the Biofield and I would get into things, a certain atonal thing going on, it would just drop into my head what it was. And I would say, when you were around 13, did something really sad happen? And they'd be like, oh yeah, that's my dog died. And so in this process of mapping the field, I remember thinking like, how do I know all this? how is this knowing just arising in me? I must have known this before, right? If you think about reincarnation. And the thing is, too, about the biofield, if your electrical biofield is storing all of your memories in standing waves, and then when you die, your field goes with you, then all your memories go with you, too. But not only are you imprinting your own field, but you're imprinting the Akasha as well, right? Because you are part of the larger field. And so everything that gets laid down in you gets laid down in the ether, in the water, in the fabric of the unity of life itself. So I think that there's nothing new under the sun, right? In different eras, this work that I do, both with tuning forks, with sound, with the biofield, and with voice, are all territory I've already been over on a soul level. And I'm just coming back to and remembering again.
I have an interesting segue there. And we talked about the soul. We've talked about sound. Merging those two together, do you feel that every individual soul emits a specific sound?
Mm-hmm. Except that it's not like a frequency, right? Because we are a symphony. Every single organ has a particular rhythm. Every system and the size and shape you are determines also that. So I do think that we all have a frequency signature that is either coherent and clear, or maybe full of noise and static, and that our potential as human beings lies in our clarity and our coherence. And that the more that we get the noise out of the signal, that we bump out the dents that life has put into us, the more that our signal becomes clear and bright and strong. And in that clarity, in that coherence, in that free flow of electrical energy, is where your potential lies. And it's literally like an electric potential. I think that's one of the biggest things that I really work with people is what I call stuckness on the journey to the potential they know they have. And it really is about liberating the knots and tangles within the electrical flow that reduce the strength of the current that animates us. And that as we become stronger and clearer and brighter, we become all that we are. And I think this is a big part of the soul's journey into what our potential is. And to discover that it is electric and that it is current and flow based has been so fascinating. You know what else has been so fascinating and so rewarding about this work? And this was from early on, once I worked with people, because we are instruments and we are self-tuning instruments, and we can be brought back into tune by a simple tuning fork. And when we clear the noise out and we amplify that true tone that's underneath, everybody, really without exception, and you know, I haven't worked in prisons and things like that, but I found that everyone was beautiful, brilliant, amazing, gifted, like astonishingly great. and I would come home from my office and I'd be telling my husband about my day. And I'm like, I worked on this person and they were great. I worked on this person. Oh my God, they're so great. And he's like, what? Is everybody great? And I was like, yeah, actually, I think that everybody is great. But you know what's really funny about that is that I saw this in other people for 15 years of seeing like how at a very fundamental level, before we are corrupted by the energies in this realm, it took that long for it to dawn on me one day. I was like, oh my God, if everybody is great, that means I must be too. And that was a very hard thing to accept. So I think, but you know, when I would tell people, when I would reflect back to them, I'm like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. You're so amazing. You're so gifted in this way. And everyone would always look at me shyly and be like, I knew that. Right. So people know that they are this, but they don't believe that they are. And it is all these false hidden beliefs that we're harboring subconsciously that get in the way of us just embracing the knowing that we were built to be amazing.
I used to cringe whenever I was starting this podcast and editing the videos. I literally could not listen to my own voice. And I know that a lot of people can resonate with that. Like, we fear our voice. And what I found, and you mentioned these artists that helped people that were afraid to sing and find their voice. And even you went through these vocal lessons in your 20s. Why is it that sometimes, and I found this for myself, and I don't attribute it to puberty or anything like that, but my voice has actually changed in the tone when I speak from when I started 5 years ago. And it's the strangest thing. I haven't been able to explain it, but I'm sure that you have some insight as to how our voices, when we find our truest, most greatest, authentic self, our voice reflects that in a very interesting way. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or insights on that.
My dear friend Stuart Pearce is a vocal coach. He was in the Shakespearean theater, a wonderful British fellow. He says that the voice is the instrument of the soul. And it comes through our, right? Your voice is connected to your vagus nerve, to your whole body. So again, patterns of tension, and any place where we're pulled in, where we're shut down, where we're restricted, is stopping our soul from fully expressing through our body. And when we think about manifestation and the declaration of like, I would like this, or I would like that, or I would like to create this, that if your own voice is completely shut down through all these patterns of tension, then your ability to create or have true power, healthy power in the world is also mitigated. So the more that we work to liberate the voice and allow the voice to become an instrument of the whole body, the more we can bring our whole electric being into the power of the word. And so for you as a podcaster, you've had all of this experience now, and you've heard yourself, and you've also become more and more comfortable and relaxed with what you're doing. You've found your stride, right? So you've been able to relax into your role and become very centered and very intentional. And so that comes through in your voice, right? It's just there. And we all know that, I mean, I've turned on podcasts and have to turn them off because I just couldn't take the tone of someone's voice because it was reflecting all of these patterns of tension. I was in the car with a friend not that long ago, and he was listening to Drake. Now, Drake isn't anyone that I listen to, and I was listening to his voice. I'm like, he's got some serious father issues. And he was like, how do you know that? I said, because I can hear all the liver tension in his voice. And so I know that his father was a difficult character, that he contracted around his father, that contraction around the father informs the liver, and that liver tension absolutely informs the timbre of your voice, right? So I was like, I can't listen to him because that's all I can hear. And he's like, Drake is actually very open about the fact that he has father issues. I was like, yeah, I can tell. So I have a very highly trained ear at this point, and just listening to someone's voice, I can hear if they've got tension in their spleen and their pancreas because of their mother, or, you know, what they have going on, because all of these different patterns of tension inform the inflection of our voices in different ways.
That's so interesting, because even when we're in certain emotional states, sometimes you'll have, like, when you're nervous or when you're trying to speak your truth and your voice shakes, that's also like, I feel that the voice is trying to get through the distortion and push through that outer layer and speak its authentic truth. And maybe that's why it shakes as well. Have you noticed that when people's voices shake?
Yeah, absolutely. Because of patterns of tension, most of us have learned how to hold back our emotions, and we do it reflexively. So this is part of my work with Sing the Body Electric, is helping people to be able to emote through sound freely. And many of us grew up in homes where we weren't allowed to emote. And so if we started to emote, we were shut down. So we developed these reflexes to shut ourselves down instead of allowing emotion to come up. And singing is very different than speaking. It's very emotional. It's very from the body. It's very naked. It's very raw. And so it has that quality of emoting. And so many people, when they go to try to sing, experience their throat closing up on them. But that's like a safety response. That is your, like, I have to hold myself back and down in order to be safe. So it's a reflex. And so the same thing happens in our body. If we've been holding back and holding back and holding back, and then we go to speak, all of that tension is still going to inform us out of fear, out of safety, out of habit, out of reflex. Which is why learning to communicate authentically in the moment, diplomatically all the time, is a really useful pursuit, because it just helps to release and open all of this and bring more power to your word.
I'd love if we could to bring out the props for a moment. We've talked a lot about the tuning forks. Maybe you have some around you that maybe we can see what they look like, see the vibrational tones that they emit, because I know that you work with many different tones and different tuning forks that mirror maybe some earth frequencies, the Schumann Resonance, the solfeggio frequencies. So I would love, if we could see them, if you have any near you, maybe get a sense of a live demonstration of what they sound like. And you said that these are things that can work on you non-locally. So we don't necessarily need to be in the room with you to experience the full beauty and benefits of these forks.
Yeah, I'm happy to show you. I don't have my really good mic setup today, so what might come through is going to be a little distorted. So don't judge the sound on how it sounds going through my mic and your speakers, because it's not a true rendering. But I'll definitely share some of the forks I have. There's many different tuning forks out there, and it's really easy to go kind of overboard. I've seen people end up with dozens and dozens of forks. I am sort of least input, most result kind of person, and I like to keep things as simple as possible. So I keep the collection that I use down to 10 forks, and these are very vetted. Over the years, have had many, many prototypes made. I've played with different sets that are out there. 30 years is a long time to experiment with different things. Back in 2013, I worked with my manufacturer to create my own alloy, because when I started doing the field combing process, if we get into a highly traumatic memory, people have been through some stuff, man. And I sort of come and walk in the door and appear like a functional human, and then I get into the record of their lives, and I'm like, whoa, like I can't even believe that you've been through this and that you appear as a fairly functional human. So what was happening was that my forks were going into this heavy distortion, and it was creating micro cracks in the metal. And then the forks would develop a buzz. And I was working with, I started working with Metavibe, and he basically said that, ordinary forks are not designed to do what you're doing with them. And I was destroying forks. I was just like, they wouldn't last very long at all, and they just blow. And so he agreed to work with me to find an alloy that would work very specifically for what we do in Biofield tuning. It took about 1.5 years, and he sent me all of these different alloys, all of these different gauges. And at the time, I had an extremely busy practice. And so I got to test them all out. And the last man standing became the alloy that we use in Biofield tuning. There's no other companies that make forks like this. And they really do kind of ring true, long, strong. They have very strong midtones, which a lot of like cheap forks on Amazon just don't have that. So these are high precision crafted, American made sound and healing instruments. And they're very different than, a cheap fork on Amazon. So the one I'm holding right now is my newest invention and truly one of my favorite forks. This one is 222 hertz, and it's sort of bell-like. Back in 2018, I became sort of obsessed with Tartaria, with old world architecture, with the bells. There were bells everywhere and ringing coherent sound out into villages all over. And all of those bells were gathered up, they were melted down, they were turned into munitions for World War I and World War II, which I think is incredibly tragic. But there's something about the temple bell that it's an invitation to presence. This is the whole aim of sound healing throughout time, is to invite you to a relaxed, aware presence. Come into this moment, be. Don't worry about the future. Don't fuss about the past. Don't be informed by the vibrations of previous traumas, but like truly be here now. And so this particular fork is an invitation. This fork doesn't really like to comb very much. It just wants to be with you. And so I'll just ring this a few times and just kind of follow that invitation to just present moment awareness. Okay. So to just start, close your eyes, sit up straight. Take a couple nice deep breaths all the way down into the belly. Maybe relax the shoulders down and just open your mind with curiosity. And just take another nice deep breath. Shake out the shoulders. Just what did you notice in just those 3 strikes of a tuning fork?
Very calming, very relaxing. It's almost like these types of sounds can emit like the original frequency. And yeah, it feels like home. It feels like, return to something greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
Very grounding too.
Right? So that's a beautiful way to put it. That was 3, that took 30 seconds, right? And yet it's this invitation home. One of my friends said it's like a cheat code for meditation because it brings me right there, like instantly. I'm just in that present moment awareness. It's not always easy to sit and quiet your mind, but if you have this sort of 1-point focus in a way that has been used on every continent, in every era of the bell, the chimes, the chant, all of this is an invitation to presence. And when we can relax in the present moment, that's where health happens, right? When we're regulated. And so the sound is just an invitation for the body to entrain itself into a more regulated, coherent expression. So that's one fork. So these are unweighted forks. And then I have weighted forks. I have here what I call my Fibonacci pair of weighted forks. And this is the 11th and 12th position in the Fibonacci sequence. So it's 89 hertz and 144 hertz. And the Fibonacci sequence contains the information of phi, the golden mean, the golden ratio, truth, beauty, harmony, order. Our body is built in phi proportions, 1.618. And so you can't hear these unless you hold them close to your ear, but using them on the body, it gives the body the information of order. And when we use these on our own body or someone else, it helps the body to remember and align with our geometric etheric template that we are built on. So these are very useful for that. I also have a Schumann pair. So these are the Schumann Resonance, which is on average 7.83 hertz. You can't make a tuning fork that's 7.83 hertz because it would be like 4 feet long. The lower the frequency, the longer the fork, the higher the frequency, the shorter the fork. And so I created, actually my very first prototype was this one, 62.64 hertz. And that's 7.83 times 8. Now, prior to creating this, I had been using a 128 hertz fork weighted fork on the body. Standard fork, a lot of people start off with that one. But when I first applied, I'll never forget the moment that I first applied this weighted fork. I just got my prototype. I was working on a friend. And what I observed with the Schumann frequencies, even though it's a multiple of it, 7.83 times 8, that it seemed to have an intelligence to it. And that where the 128 would just vibrate locally, this fork felt like it traveled through the body and found where it needed to go. Like it seemed to have an intelligence to it that I found so intriguing. And I never picked up the 128 again after I started using this. But then I wanted to be able to create a binaural beat of 7.83 hertz. So in brainwaves, it's sort of at the alpha theta cusp. It's a place of deep quiet and almost like an expanding into unity consciousness, that unified field that we were talking about earlier. It that's the brainwave state there. And so when you activate these together and you hold them up to your ears, it will entrain your brain into the difference between the two, which is 7.83 hertz. It's such an interesting thing that our brain does. So you can hold the barrels and feel and hear that thrum. And after just a couple minutes of that, or even less, you can feel how the hemispheres of your brain start to synchronize. And it will absolutely take you down out of the sort of busy beta brainwave state. So these forks inform your electrical body. The Schumann is the Earth's electrical heartbeat. Our brainwaves are electric. And so we want to be trained to in sync with our atmosphere, our environment. And so these help to support that.
Just a second there, because I saw that you were putting it directly on your body. And I've been in certain spiritual spaces where you'll see people just hold up tuning forks and put it on your third eye right here. And I never really knew, I've done it a few times and it feels interesting. It feels good. But I'm curious to know what actually happens from your scientific lens when you put the fork up against certain different points in your body, like you just did with the heart space.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, it captures your attention, right? So it's kind of fun to do it with kids because you put a weighted fork on the sternum and they're like, whoa, right? And so it pulls you out of thinking mind and into somatic awareness, which is always good because most of what creates problems for us is really truly our thinking mind. But you're mostly water, and we know what happens when you put vibration into water. And so there's conduction through all the fluids in your body. There's a pattern interrupt. Patterns of tension will create fascia binding, fascia knotting, rhythms. Well, like one thing that I've observed is that a lot of pain is like an electrical traffic jam where there's too much current running through those wires and you get pain. And then there's a sort of a magnetic jam up there too. And so simply by putting a weighted fork on the body, you're sending pulsing energy into it, which then can help move things along. Where there is inflammation, where there is restriction, it gets the muscles to relax. If you use, I don't have any forks with boots here, but I've invented different boots to go on the end. One is an amplifier boot, and you can rub that, and that just helps to smooth the fascia and get the electricity and lymph and everything flowing better. So that's one thing. But there was a study that came out of Harvard a few years ago that said that mechanically stimulated tissue heals 2.5 times faster than non-stimulated tissue. Well, a tuning fork it's acoustic. It's not like a massage gun coming in there, but it is stimulating that. And so it helps things to heal faster. I was in a motorcycle accident a few years ago. I slammed into the ground going 50 miles an hour on my Ninja and rolled 40 feet down the road and ended up in a ditch. And the only thing that broke was the outside of my left ankle. And I used my tuning forks on it religiously in the field for a few days. And then I was able to use it on there. And I was able to start walking within 2 weeks. and actually went out dancing 4 weeks after my accident. Now I wasn't like jumping all over the place, but I was able to stand up and move back and forth. And that's very fast healing for a broken bone. But it, mechanical stimulation heals 2.5 times faster. And so I really got to experience that on myself. And I also had soft tissue damage around my knee, and I was able to heal that just using the tuning forks every day. We have a lot of people who use them on their abdomen, on all of their digestive organs, and have
get those 6-pack abs.
Well, that's another way. So I'll just show you. There's another fork I make called the Sonic Slider, and this is 7.83 times 12. And I actually created this for my face, right? I'm, getting older. I'm not the kind of gal who's going to get injections or surgery, and it's not my vibe. But at the same time, nobody digs getting older. And so I was like, I've got to find some kind of sonic alternative. And so I made a whole bunch of different prototypes based in sacred geometry, based in the Schumann, based in other numbers that I came up with. Kind of got them all at the same time. And I knew the moment that I activated this one, it's 93.96 hertz, 7.83 times 12, like it has such a pleasing frequency. It's just like, oh, I just knew that was the one. And so I started off just using it on my face and my neck. And I was in a Zoom meeting a few weeks later, and someone's like, what did you do to your face? I'm like, haha.
Whips out the fork. I have this.
Yeah, like it doesn't get rid of wrinkles, but it definitely helps smooth you out. And then I started using it on my body, and I discovered, I don't know if you can see this, but for a middle-aged woman, I don't have bat wings. I'm sort of horrified by the idea of having bat wings. I don't think anybody wants to have bat wings.
I've never heard them called that. I have never.
It's mortifying, really. So I was like, I have to come up with a solution for that. And so when I started using it on my body, I was like, wow, it's actually toning my muscles. It's getting rid of my crepey skin. I actually lost a bunch of weight when I started using it on my body because I had a lot of fascia binding. I grew up with 5 older siblings that were 6 to 12 years older than me, 4 brothers and a sister. And I was tickled and kind of tortured a whole bunch as a kid in the roughhousing way that kids do, but I was the runt of the litter. And I spent a lot of my childhood like in contraction, protecting myself. And so I had all this fascia binding that was impeding fluid flow. And when I started rubbing the handle of the tuning fork all over my body, it released the fascia knots that allowed my fluids to start flowing more freely.
Wow.
So, that's sort of amazing. I mean, it's the same thing with anything like working out or whatever. You have to do it every day. But we've seen people get incredible results just playing with this. But the digestion, right? We talk about digestive tone, digestive rhythm. Well, what is a tuning fork but like tone and rhythm? And so much of digestive disorders are from patterns of tension that we're holding. When we're kids, we all got stomach aches, in school and things like that. And so we have all of this binding in our guts that we don't even realize is impeding our ability to have robust digestion. And so just hanging out with the fork, poking all around your liver, poke around till you find tender spots, like let it run out. And it's going to create this releasing, this relaxing, this opening, this input of tone and rhythm. And all of a sudden you find that your digestion improves. So it's just super useful for all kinds of things. People with the sonic, people are always like, well, if I'm going to get one fork, what do I get? I'm like, get the Sonic Slider. I carry it around with me wherever I go. I work on strangers who have pain and fix them. It's just so easy and so useful and so pleasing and so resetting. So that is a super useful fork. And then I have a few others as well that I use for field combing. They all have their use. But you don't need to go out and get a million tuning forks. You can work with just a few and really get the benefits. And it's a great way to self-administer. Like the Sonic Slider and the 222 are just great ways to self-soothe and help mitigate stress. It's a stressful world. And for so many people, and it seems to be in many ways getting more acutely stressful. So that anything that we can do, whether it's tuning forks, whether it's gongs or bowls or chant or mantra, there are many ways to incorporate sound into your self-care practice, and the effectiveness of it is immediately evident. Right. So I would really invite people to explore whatever avenue of sound is interesting to you. And, you don't have to go off the deep end and get a ton of things. Even one small bowl can really just help to bring you into that present moment where you can relax, where you can breathe, where you can sort of expand, reset, and then be more resilient going forward.
Yeah, you mentioned the tuning forks as a mechanism to heal broken bones faster, help with digestive issues, have better skin, and reverse those aging effects. What about when it comes to chronic illnesses or diseases, like maybe a cancer, maybe a fibromyalgia? How does the sound and the tuning forks play into that realm of healing?
Well, what comes to mind is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think that these tools are better suited to be used preventatively. Certainly, you only need an ounce of them preventatively to just help keep you coherent, help keep you regulated. When disease has gone really deeply into the body, you really need a team. You need to really come in with a multimodal approach. Like, tuning forks alone are not going to cure your cancer at all. Now, by going through your field and reading your record, I might be able to tell you the emotional or mental proclivities or particular traumas that you experienced that created the pattern of tension that has made your body unable to process the toxins that are causing disease, right? Like, I'm a big fan of the clean fish tank model, that your body is a fish tank and that you want to keep it as clean as possible. You want to have plenty of oxygen going through it. You want to make sure there's flow, that algae isn't growing anywhere, that all your fish are in a good, healthy balance. You're getting the right amount of food and all of that, right? So I'm a sort of a terrain theorist in that way. So when the fish tank has become very dirty because the body's detox pathways are shut down through patterns of tension, right? You have to do a lot to kind of open up the detox pathways, support the lymph system, get the rhythms in order, get the right kinds of foods coming in. Don't go bonkers on supplements because that's too much for a compromised system to manage all of those different ingredients. Take a good look at the choices that you've been making, the beliefs that you're holding, right? There's so much to that picture. Certainly, tuning forks can be a small assistance in helping you on every front to get so that your fish tank becomes clean again. But sometimes once disease has set in, it's very hard to stop that trajectory, right? If that's the way things are going, sometimes you can turn it around. Sometimes that's just fate, is bringing you to that place. But I'm much more of an advocate of being in that preventive realm. And that's how I live my life. I get regular massage. I get regular light touch chiropractic. I get regular tuning. If I start to go more south than that, I'll get acupuncture, right? So I believe in keeping yourself clean, clear, solid, balanced, and not succumbing to these deep patterns of tension that will inhibit flow and stop your body from keeping itself in order. Yeah. And we, in order to take good care of ourselves, we have to have self-worth. We have to believe that we're worthy of taking the time and the energy to keep ourselves good. And many people who are healers and helpers are in the habit of sort of bending over backwards to take care of others. They put others first, and then their own health suffers. And so there's a fair amount of audacity involved in high quality self-care. But I've certainly fell victim to that as a mom, as a giver, as a doer. I've brought myself to the point of being burnt toast twice in my life and had to really learn the hard way how to put myself first, right? Fill up your own cup first and then give from the overflow. And that's what I do now. But it's not an easy pattern to shift, to really feel comfortable putting yourself and your own well-being first. But if you want to live a long, strong, healthy life as someone who is supporting humanity, you need to do that. And tuning forks are a great way to help take care of you.
Yeah, it's one of the most important conversations that we could be having, especially in the consciousness, spirituality space, because understanding these principles of taking care of ourselves and bringing our body back to its original state, original frequency, it'll allow us to serve from a way different place. And we've been talking throughout the whole conversation around how our biofields essentially are the records of our life, holds the records of our life. And in that last segment, you brought up the word fate, which is closely similar to destiny. I'm curious to know if you found that our biofield also holds the codes of our destiny, and maybe those certain points in our life that are written in the stars, like the Alchemist book talks about how, maktub it's already written. That's the word that they use in that book. And I'm wondering if our records, our biofield also holds some glimpses or information of that specifically.
That's really, it's an interesting thing to think about. There's a phrase that I found very much to be true, which is your biography becomes your biology. And I had some friends who were visiting me, spent the night last night, and he has a frozen right shoulder, 58-year-old guy. Now, in the Biofield anatomy map, the issues with the right shoulder relate to a tendency to say yes when we mean no, overgive, overdo for others, right? It's like this over accommodation, putting ourselves out to take care of everybody else. And he has always been the peacekeeper in his family. And he's currently had issues with two of his brothers that he's been trying to fix. And so this morning I gave him a session and I just put my hands on his shoulders first, just to listen and feel into the story. And I could absolutely feel like his body is just tired of playing that role of peacekeeping, of accommodating, of bending over backwards, of trying to make sure everybody's okay. Right? So he, of course, he has a frozen right shoulder. His body doesn't want to keep doing that anymore. This is just done with that whole thing. And so I gave him a tune-up, what we're calling adjustment, where we comb through the field and kind of get the energy that was frozen, electrical jam up, just get it moving. And so it's not just like a physical thing like, oh, your shoulder's frozen. It's like, this is your mind. Remember that your body is inside your mind. And any place you're out of balance in your mind is going to inform your physiology. I'm going to be sitting next to someone I don't know from Adam on an airplane and they tell me what's wrong with their body and I can tell them everything that's going on in their mind and their life based on their pattern of tension and pain in their body. Because I've just come to see so clearly this sort of universal pattern. We could go through any body part and I can tell you what the imbalance is that I've seen there again and again and again. And so I was able to work on him. He didn't have much range of motion. He couldn't lift his arm up past, straight in front of him. And a 20-minute adjustment and a conversation with him about his tendency to overgive and how that turns into resentment and how at 58, his body was just tired of living that life. And by the time we were done, he could raise his arm almost straight. Right? Because we addressed the electrical system, the pattern that was holding it, the mind frame that was underneath, that was informing it. So when we work with the body's electrical system, the biofield anatomy, we get right into what are you thinking or doing that is creating this in your physiology. And if you want to stop having right shoulder pain or right hip pain is another really common one that I see in a lot of people. And that's a tendency to have a busy mind, busy body. And it's got long to-do lists. They're always thinking about what they have to get done. There's a real like go, go, go. There's a lot of projection into the future. And that pulls your energy like out of center because you're not in the present moment. You're very future oriented. The right side of the body relates more to sort of outward future, or the left side's more inward or past. And so we have to address the habits, conscious or subconscious, that are giving rise to that imbalance, so that you don't keep creating it, right? And it's a very different way. It's going upstream of how we've been taught to look at the chemical and mechanical and or try to fix things on that level. But we have to look in the generative and the electrical to really truly get to the root of what is going on. So as far as whether things are faded, or like, can we glimpse the future in the field, or can we see the sort of logical through line of the way that a life has been lived? Is it already written? Sometimes I really think that, that it's almost like going tubing down a river. The river's already there. The experience is already there. You're just moving through time along a path that already exists, and all times are now. But I think that's one of the perennial philosophical questions that we can sort of talk about all day long. But can you absolutely answer it? It kind of, again, falls into the great mystery of, is it all inevitable, or can it be changed? Or if you come to see me and I help you change your mind patterns, and then your life starts to flow differently, but then that was fated that you were going to come see me and then things are going to change. So I don't know.
For you, what is the end game of healing?
I love that you asked me that question, because it's something that I've been thinking about and talking about a lot lately. I think the end game of healing is really simple. I think that you're just more free to enjoy the ordinary in your life. That's it. I don't think it's much more than that. You're more playful. You get to laugh more. You get to like make your coffee just right and enjoy every single sip. It's like sucking the marrow out of the mundane. And it isn't, I think we've been sort of programmed with FOMO and this and that and grandiosity, and that we have to have all these big things. But really, for most of us, most of our day, as you get up, you might go to the gym or work out. You're going to have your breakfast beverage. You're going to eat breakfast at some point. You're going to commute. You're going to just do ordinary human things. And so when the noise in the signal settles down, and you become more coherent, it's easier to feel gratitude. It's easier to feel appreciation. It's easier to feel love. It's easier to feel connected with God and the cosmos. It's easier to relate peaceably with your loved ones. And that just leads to enjoyment. And I know that sounds so maybe anticlimactic or whatever, but I think that having the freedom to enjoy the simple parts of being human really is the end game of healing. When you get yourself out of pain. I know for me, I had a long journey of emerging from high levels of dysfunction in every area of my life. I started off on this journey bulimic. I was a sugar addict. I had all kinds of body issues. I had all kinds of digestive issues. I was fighting with my husband all the time. I was trapped in poverty consciousness, like all the things, all the lobster pots. I fell into all of them, got trapped in all of them, and then had to figure my way out. And it wasn't until I started receiving tuning from my first students in 2010, and I started understanding the concept of electric health, that I started to be able to get out of those lobster pots and become free. And so where I had been trapped in the noise of like the eating disorder and the addiction and the physical pain and inflammation and the discomfort, like I wasn't free to enjoy food. I wasn't free to enjoy my body. I wasn't free to enjoy life. It was all pain and suffering and nonsense everywhere, And so my journey of healing has been like, I'm present in this moment. It's a beautiful day, the way that the light is landing on the trees, the way that the birds are singing outside, the way that I am enjoying a body that's pain-free, right? It's so people, you can start enjoying life right now. If that's knowing that that's the end game, being free to enjoy, then where are you free to enjoy your life where you haven't been? Maybe you decide to Put a pot of flowers out on your front step. There's a house that I drive by on my way to work, and they're all their front porch and their front lawn is just a beautiful garden. And every time I drive by it, I look at it and I appreciate it. Right. And I appreciate that they take the time to give that beauty to their neighborhood. Right? It's all these little simple things that we overlook in search of something that we think is bigger or beyond that. And then we miss the magic of the moment that is inherent, right? That book that came out a long time ago, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. There are no ordinary moments. Right? It's all wild that we're even here and that we have bodies and that we're having this experience. And I think the media and, we're sort of programmed into this discontent because it causes us to go shop and to buy and to try to find things to fill that hole. We're just simply deeply enjoying your morning coffee while you look out the window and listen to the birds. Like, that is magic medicine right there. Right. So can you bring gratitude? Can you bring appreciation? Can you bring beauty to now? That you don't have to wait until you ascend to 5D. I think there's a lot of this sort of like, we're waiting for Christ to come, or we're waiting to we vibe high enough to, to ascend or something. And then meanwhile, missing out on the fact that our bodies are built for pleasure and that there are many ways throughout our day to have little yay moments and to celebrate all the little things, even in washing dishes, that you're caressing the beloved, that this is all life stuff, that it is all God, the creator, the created, right? And the preciousness of like every single thing is the essence of life itself. Can we bring ourselves into this sort of tender reverence of the magic and the mystery of life? Now, I know you can't do that all the time, you drive in traffic and you got to deal with family members or whatever, you know what I mean? You're going to be human. You're going to have fussy times. You're going to be hungry or tired or angry or whatever. It's okay to be human. We don't need to be Christ or Buddha. We don't need to vibe high. We can give ourselves permission to have the human experience, to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be human, to have times that are difficult and uncomfortable or down or low, because they provide contrast that help us to appreciate what's good, right? I mean, just even here in Vermont, we had a dreadful spring. It rained every day. It was cold and miserable for months. But then we had the most glorious summer of just sunny day after sunny day, perfect weather, low humidity. It was wonderful, right? So we went through this horrible contraction of the spring, but then moved into this wonderful, delicious expansion of the summer. And so life is like that. And it's okay to have down moments, and they give you contrast and appreciation to the up. Right. So I'm a big fan of embracing the whole spectrum of what it means to be human, but to stay in the mystery and as often as you can, bring yourself into the present moment, into gratitude, into appreciation, into enjoyment. But don't beat yourself up if you fall out of it, because it's okay, because that's what it means to be human.
Such a beautiful reflection. I mean, to put it into the larger perspective, that we can enjoy those little moments, the ordinary moments, and see them as this extraordinary mystery that we're all a part of. That if we take it for granted and we have a sunshine, we have our coffee, our tea, and we take those things for granted, we're living life at 50%. And I think a lot of this work is about living it to the fullest. And a big part of that is having our bodies be in tune with our soul, because our soul wants to be free. It wants to be liberated. I think one of the most powerful quotes I came across from you was, we all have this yearning to experience soul liberation. And where do you think that starts, that soul liberation that you talk about?
Well, I think the voice is really the quickest portal to that. I really do. That the work that I do with Isaac and Tol Koren, Sing the Body Electric, like we're going to be at Esalen in November. to me, that when we free the voice, we free the soul, we free the body. And I've heard so many wonderful stories after people do our workshops that they're speaking up for their boundaries more. They're saying what they want. They are completely changing their life because they liberated their voice. So I think that toning, chanting, singing, working so that you can enjoy your voice, right? That, to me, that's the end game with that too, is that our bodies are incredible instruments and our voices can make all kinds of incredible sounds. Like you played a song for me before we came on air. And what magic in that woman's voice, right? Moving, like I got chills all over my whole body. Like our voices can do that. Like that's so incredible that a human voice can move us to tears. It can, right? It's so powerful. And so it is through the voice that we express the soul. And the more free the voice becomes, the more we activate our potential. So I think that is the most direct route. It is the quickest route. It is the most effective route. And I couldn't sing for years. I had this sort of irrational terror about singing in front of people, and maybe from lifetimes or maybe just from my childhood. It took me a lot of work. Like I've been able to speak in front of thousands of people. I've never been nervous about speaking in front of people, but the thought of singing in front of people, it would make me just completely clench up. My palms would sweat. Like I just can't do that. I think a lot of people feel that way. So I didn't have the freedom to enjoy my own human instrument. And one of the greatest things about having my voice be liberated into this place where I love it and I'm comfortable with it is that I get to enjoy playing with the instrument that I have with me all the time. And that I can do that freely, that I can sing in the car, I can sing around other people, or I even lead sing-alongs now at these workshops, right? I'm not a super singer. I'm not super experienced at singing, but I don't care. I don't need to be. What's important is that I enjoy the experience of singing, that I enjoy the breath movement, the blood movement. There's been so many studies done that show like all how good it is for your body, your being to sing, and especially to sing with others. And I think people are craving singing with others, but encountering the same problems that I've had. Singing together in community, like there's nothing like it. And you feel part of the reason why I do the Sing the Body Electric work, which is basically hanging out and making baby sounds together, but we've turned them into songs too, which are really cool, is that I feel so vital afterwards. I feel so alive and so expanded. And that's like moving into our potential, right? Like a high level of vitality allows me to stay on top of everything. My car is clean, my apartment's clean, my to-do list is done. Like because my battery is high, because I engage in practices that feed my electric body, I can stay on top of everything. And that feels good, right? Because your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. And if your inner world is chaotic and messy, then your outer world is going to be that. And it's usually a consequence of your vitality being really low. So anything that you can do to raise your voltage, right? That's the language that I use, is going to, once you have enough energy, you're like, oh, I've got energy to bust that clutter. Like so many times after I give tune-ups to people, they come back because we're putting within in better order. They come back and they say, wow, I went home and I had the energy to like tackle this closet that I've been like avoiding for a really long time because my energy went up, my own inner order went up. And so now I can fix the world around me. And that's it on the larger scale too, right? Because as each of us individually brings ourselves into deeper order, into the sort of harmony of the cosmos that is inviting us there right now, then we collectively co-create that field and can bring that into the world.
Such a powerful reminder, Eileen. Thank you so much for that. We end every show with a segment called The Final Trio, which are some questions that we ask at the very end. Before that, I would love to get a grasp on where people can find you. We talked about the beautiful inventions, the tuning forks that you offer to the world. Where would you send people to connect with you and also with all your work that you're doing with the Biofield and the electric body?
Mm-hmm. biofieldtuning.com, biofieldtuningstore.com. So we have all kinds of tools, certainly, high quality sound healing tools. Over the years, what happened to me was my practice became so busy I couldn't manage it anymore. And I was in the middle of nowhere in the mountains of Vermont, no sign on my door. But because tuning works physical, mental, emotional, ancestral, relational, I was helping people solve their problems. I'm a good problem solver. And so my practice just became unmanageable. And so I started, oddly, doing group distance tuning sessions, which is nothing I would ever do. Like, how ridiculous does that sound? Like, I'm like, I'll pass on that. But I did a bunch for free, and people were like, I absolutely felt that. Like, that was helpful. It was a good way for me to treat a lot of people and me spend less time, and it would cost less money. And so I started making recordings. And so I have this huge library of recordings that you can listen to that, there's an adrenal rhythm reset series that absolutely shifts your adrenal burnout and helps resurrect your adrenals rhythmically, tonally, things like that. So there's a lot of those sorts of things to be found there. We also have a training program. We have in-person classes and online classes. You can become certified in biofield tuning. And we have almost 4,000 biofield tuning students and practitioners around the world now, which is kind of amazing. But we don't have all of them in our directory, but we do have a directory that you can see if there's someone near you. But everyone is also trained to do this at a distance. So that's also an option. So if you want to experience a session, you can see who resonates for you there. I also have a YouTube channel, and I have got a lot of things on there. I have a Sonic Sundays series that I think there's 29 talks about delicate subjects, and each one has a tuning in it. So that's a great resource for spiritual inspiration and vibrational organizing. And I'm also on Instagram. So lots of places to get lots of information there.
Beautiful. We'll link everything down in the show notes for people to go directly connect with you. For this last segment, the first two questions are personalized to every guest. The last one we ask at the end of every show. So the first one I had for you today is, what does it mean for us to be in our radiance?
The solar plexus is our inner sun. And when we're kids, like my grandbaby is learning to smile, right? And it's just like the most heart melty thing to have a baby smile at you, right? Especially one that she's almost 3 months old. She's just learning to do this. Like, that's what it means to be in your radiance, in that full-on light of innocent shining. And that is what the world really takes away from us. That is what our educational system, our Madison Avenue, and that the world dims us. It causes us to contract, to make ourselves small, to shade ourselves, to pull ourselves in. It takes a tremendous amount of courage and healing, I think, for most people to get to the place where you feel safe enough to be vulnerable enough to radiate, to shine, to let the light that you are be absolutely visible. And when I've worked with groups, and I often find that this is one of the hardest things to do, to feel safe enough to radiate. I got sunshine in my stomach, like, wah, just beaming it out into the world, because so many of us almost all of us started that way. And then we got projected onto and abused. And we're like incredible Stradivariuses that have been terribly mishandled. And the radiance is in that intrinsic beauty. So to bring ourselves back to our in-tuneness and our own intrinsic magnificence is to bring ourselves back to radiance and to radiant health and to radiant presence. Yeah.
And in many ways, that's the core of what you teach, is to reflect our light and go back to that original radiance. Next question, what is the one tone that you feel humanity most needs to embody right now?
The I would say that it is the tone of the cosmos, like the music of the spheres, the one song, right? Universe, the one song. We're all part of the one. And we want to be moved by and in the truth of that one, right? You don't want cells in your body going rogue and acting as if they're not part of the body. I think that's maybe what cancer is like some group of cells has lost the plot here and they're not in sync with the fundamental harmony that the body is designed for. So I would say it's that deeper song, that truly deep song that is informing all of nature, that is informing the movement of the cosmos, the movement of life itself from the perspective of the one.
This last question that we ask, we call it the time capsule question. And it requires us to travel out a little bit out into the future, maybe around 15 to 20 years down the line. I chose out those time frames because I believe that's going to be a time in history when the young generations of today will have more opportunities to step into leadership positions around the world and really be able to shine their brightest light and bring their radiance to the systems, the structures of the world. And just like any great leader that we've had, they've always been accompanied by great mentors, great masters that have surrounded them, great access to wisdom, information, knowledge. And you had the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule for them that they would open when they're ready to lead into this coherent world, this golden age that many have prophesized. But knowing that whatever you leave behind in this time capsule, they're going to be then later equipped with the necessary information, tools, knowledge, and wisdom to lead forward. It's basically a question about your legacy, what you would leave behind for the future generations in the world. And it could be anything from a message, a frequency, a vibration, maybe something physical as well. But what would you put in this time capsule that would be picked up, decades down the line when the world needs it the most?
A song that I haven't written yet. And I say that, Emilio, because that song that you played for me was so moving. A song can evoke the words, right? Whatever you want to say in the words. But then it also creates a movement of energy, a feeling, a knowing, a resonance. So I think that a song would encapsulate the most impact that I would want to have. My own voice and how it carries the codes of my own healing that I've done, the wisdom that I've learned from so many teachers. And in that power of music, that power to move, to remind, to help people to remember. So that I better get on making that song, huh?
When you have it, let us know. Let us know. That's so powerful because music essentially bypasses our analytical mind and it goes directly to the cells. It goes directly to the subconscious. It goes directly to wherever it needs as medicine. That's why music is medicine. So what a powerful way to leave behind that legacy in a song of your own. So I'm looking forward to hearing that when the time is right. Eileen, thank you so much for just the work that you do for humanity, the commitment that you have, the devotion, the genius level inventions that you've been able to bridge and bring through for us at this time. I think it's the most necessary. So thank you so much. I look forward to doing many, many more of these together and continue co-weaving and seeing how we can bring more of our medicine together into the world and to whoever maybe needs it right now. So thank you so much, love. And I look forward to doing this again.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Emilio. This is great. I really enjoyed speaking with you and I absolutely look forward to more as well.